Hi, welcome to Lyman Outdoors. Today we're going to talk about wolves and wolf trapping lessons from legends. First of all, wolves are fascinating. We all know that we have spiritual connections to them. We've coexisted for thousands of years. We hate them when they kill our cattle, but we love them so much we've domesticated them down to lapdogs. Today, the guys that I'm going to talk about are Western Canadian old trapping legends that made their living off the land doing predator control, full-time trapping. One of them is passed away, two are still alive. Some lessons that I learned from them and how I applied them in my life, and we'll go through three setups, one from each of them, and we'll talk a little bit about wolves first. Talk a little bit about wolves first. Wolves and humans seem to have this love-hate relationship. I mean, for millennia, they've been the enemy, but we've also domesticated them. I mean, almost even the little lap dog has got a little genetics, wolf genetics in it. So we've been definitely in a relationship with wolves for forever. One thing about wolves, you see people that have a half wolf, or they say it's 7/8 wolf or something. It's generally pretty hard to pin down. Wolves are always on the move. It seems that that's how they're genetically wired, is to be moving all the time. It's probably why they have huge home ranges, you know. Their home ranges are, you know, sometimes hundreds of square kilometers, and they patrol them, and they're guarding them from other ranges of other wolves. And that's one thing that these guys taught me is, you know, wolves won't kill within their own pack. Now, as they go around their ranges and patrol, if another pack, you know, impedes in their territory, quite often that can be deadly, as those wolves are protecting their food in their territory. They know almost all of the animals that live in their home range, and that's their food. And if another wolf pack comes in, that's where things turn deadly. The exception to that, though, is like, again, sometimes there's violent conflicts within a pack, particularly when, you know, one alpha is taking over from another alpha. They'll kick that alpha right out of the pack, and sometimes that alpha turns into the lone wolf, and he's 2 to 3 days behind the main pack, and he's picking up the scraps because he's no longer able to hunt quite effectively by himself. So that's generally how they see it works for the alpha that got kicked out. Now, wolves are an interesting, because they're a pack animal. They work great in packs. They need one another generally to survive. I heard on the Meat Eater podcast that with the lady on their episode 605, and she said the average lifespan of a wolf is 4.3 years, which is pretty tough, not a long time there. I think they live a pretty rough lifestyle. They get injured catastrophically sometimes when they're taking down animals like moose or buffalo or whatever. That's why sometimes I'm pretty convinced that when they say mortally wound a big ungulate, sometimes they'll wait that out rather than risk themselves getting hurt. So sometimes, I mean, I've seen videos where the wolves just sit around for a day and wait for the animal to die. For example, that was a buffalo video I seen, but it makes sense for them to do that, put themselves as least risk as possible. It's an interesting one. I can't remember the actual percentage, but wolves eat a lot of ungulates. But they did a study in northern BC here. The university did one, and they had collared 2 different wolf packs, and one of those wolf packs were eating, I can't remember if it was 30% of their diet was black bear, and that was a really interesting find that they had. And I wonder if that has to do with the explosion of black bears we had during the last couple of years, and maybe lower ungulates due to wildfires and stuff like that. So it was interesting that wolves are taking down black bears and eating them. Wolves get blamed a lot for, you know, cattle kills and stuff like that without a lot of solid evidence. I know there's a lot of people that would go out and investigate if it was a wolf that killed it. And if you don't a thorough investigation, sometimes it had nothing to do with wolves, but wolves got the blame. And so that's part of the reason why there's such a love-hate relationship. I think ranchers and people with chickens or sheep or lambs or whatever, I think they at times blame the wrong guy for someone taking down part of their herd. Now, as far as you know, the one guy was telling me that the wolves, you know, favorite food if it comes to domesticated animals is a horse over cattle, and the wolf does not like a vaccinated cattle, whatever that means. Somehow he feels that they can sense what's going on there. I'm not sure. It's just an interesting note from one of these guys that was telling me about that. Now, for predator control, one of the guys, and he's absolutely right, sometimes wolf packs move in to an area with cattle and stuff, and they don't kill the cows. There's a pack there. Sometimes ranchers get a little excited and they want that pack removed. The problem with doing that is if you remove that pack that's not killing cattle, you're allowing that area to be opened up to another pack that potentially might be cattle killers. And so it's, you know, he was recommending if you got a pack on your ranch and you know they come through there and they haven't touched your cows, you're almost better off to leave them until it becomes a problem, because they'll keep the cattle killing pack away from your ranch. So that was an interesting thing I learned. The first guy's set that I'm going to talk about, he's a real interesting guy. He's a wolf or a lifelong predator control guy. He firmly believes that wolves have a spiritual connection to crows and ravens. He thinks historically and somehow they work together at times. And I think they're both in it for the same thing. They're both trying to make a living out there. He also believes when you're setting wolf traps, you got to be in the right mindset. He doesn't think a bad mindset's going to help you out at all catching wolves. He also taught me a little bit about scent. So if you're a rancher and you're trying to catch wolves, that wolf knows what you know, he knows your scent. So if you went to great lengths to cover your scent, it's not going to make as much of a difference than one that's in the wild, and it's extremely important to watch your scent control with wolves that are in the wild that don't know you. He also told me that quite often wolves spend a lot of time at beaver dams. He believes they teach their young to hunt there, and they sit very long periods of time at beaver dams. And once in a while, a beaver will actually take down a wolf pup that's trying to, you know, learning to hunt. It'll kill it, which I found quite interesting. Yeah, so his favorite set, if conditions allowed, I mean, he taught about leg holds and stuff like that, but his favorite set was just a snare setup with no bait, just wolf scent, like a film canister, a little, you know, one of those little black film canisters with wolf lure in there. And sometimes he would maybe pop a feather into the cap of that film canister, drill a hole and hang it from a tree, a little visual clue, and then he would snare the heck out of that area. His thinking was that wolf pack smells another pack in their home range and they're pissed. They come charging in there to see who's, you know, trying to steal their groceries, and that was his way, and he said he's had great success doing that. I mean, we've done it. He would also, so he would set the snares up, and then he would put a couple of P-post sets just on the outskirts of his snare setup, because, well, one, if, you know, he felt if you catch the alpha, you'll probably catch most of the pack, because they're going to run around, they're not going to know what to do. But if you don't catch the alpha, what the alpha will do is sneak back and get within just about sight of the wolf that's caught, and, you know, we'll start to call it and try to call him out of there. And sometimes he's had success catching him in P-post sets on the outskirts of the snare setup, which is quite interesting. It just hedges your bet. The guy I'm quite familiar with, he's passed on now. He was a great outdoorsman. He was a hunting guide, a fishing guide, and a lifelong trapper. His favorite setup that I've used is he would just have a bait station, and he would snare the heck out of it. And he was a no mess around guy. It wasn't 20 snares. It was minimum 50, but 150 at times too. And he had good luck doing that. He loved it. I know you educate the wolves sometimes by doing that. And maybe if you only catch one or two, maybe you don't see that pack for a year or two, but he had great success doing it. That was his favorite way to catch them. I've done the same setup as him. I like his setup with the bait, but I've also implemented the P-post leg hold setup on the outskirts of that, depending on where I'm trapping. But I kind of combined the leg hold with the bait snare section, and the more snares the better. That's what he said. That's the way I like it too. Now the third guy, he's a lifelong trapper. He's a legend. He's in books and stuff like that. I'm not naming these guys because I never asked them. I'd like to have the two on that are still alive. It's unfortunate that the other guys passed on. Now I may try to have an interview with his wife. She's a great gal too. She was an outdoors woman and very full of knowledge, and I want to hear more stories about their life. So the third guy, he believed and he had great success doing it. He'd have two bait stations, and then he'd have blind sets. He'd have them 1 or 2 kilometers apart, bait stations, no snares, and once the wolves got in there, they would move back and forth between the two bait stations. What he would do then is he'd put blind snares between the two bait stations, and he had great success, and he firmly believed that the wolves never got trap savvy. They didn't put 2 and 2 together in terms of associating the bait stations with the fact that they're losing members of their pack. So he liked that. It's a great way to go too. I mean, all these guys, they greatly respected wolves. Wolves are an amazing animal. Just the kill sites that we've come across have been incredible. I mean, I've came across kill sites where there's literally 4 hooves left, and that's it, and they've ate the whole thing. I've also come across them where they killed a deer one night and they devoured the whole thing, and the next day they killed another deer on the ice and ate nothing, but the head was missing. That was all that was gone, and the rest of the body was there. So wolves do kind of what wolves want, and I think it depends on the availability of animals. Like a funny story, we had trapped a lynx in a cubby, and when we got up to it, we had seen the wolves had been in there, and they had ate the entire lynx except for the head, which was in the 330. They didn't touch anything to do with the steel, so we just left it there, and we set up. They had went in and kind of messed up. It was a natural cubby that we made with branches and logs and stuff, and they sort of tore it up, and we set a leg hold right at the back of it. And we knew the wolves were around, so we thought, well, let's just try setting a leg hold, and we did. And sure enough, the next day we had caught one right in the leg hold. Obviously, he came back sniffing around, and we got one that way. I think we've helped the ungulates in our area. We were averaging 6 to 8 wolves a year we would take out of there, and if every wolf is a 6 to 8 moose a year wolf, I mean, we've definitely seen an uptick in moose populations where we're at. It's interesting, in the spring it seems like the wolves, once the thaw comes, they take a holiday and then they regroup in the fall. So it's interesting. I think they may go out exploring and then they regroup in the late fall. Yeah. Also, yeah, and going back to some of those kill sites, we had snowmobiled into the cabin, in the dark. It's dark early here in midwinter, and that night, unbeknownst to us, while we were in the cabin, wolves killed a caribou within 400 yards of our cabin. You could see the story unfold, and they had killed a young caribou. It was probably a calf, and it was completely devoured. We were there for a couple nights. Next day we came back, and there was fresh caribou tracks on the ice again. So I don't know if those caribou were coming back to check on their loved one or what, but that caribou was completely devoured except for the fur. When those wolves get get something down on the lake, frozen lakes, it seems that they make pretty short work of it. They're pretty amazing and they're efficient killers. You know, we've seen moose with, you know, they get 20 feet from shore and they're down. We've come across those kills many times. Another interesting thing is, I think the winter is wolf party time. They seem to run the show and do really well in the winter. I mean, it depends on snow conditions and stuff, but for the most part, they're making a pretty good living in the winter time. They often spend time. I've noticed that they'll spend time on an island. This big lake we go up to, quite often they'll circle the island, and I don't know if it's because they're chasing something on it, but it seems like they spend a lot of time on islands as well, maybe resting. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little tidbit into some trapping legends. It's enjoyable to talk about wolves. I like doing it. I'll probably do it again. I'll definitely do another wolf one on more of the specifics of snare sizes and stuff. Everybody has their own opinion on that, so I'll do another episode on more of the details. This is all the experience, you know. I'm sure I'm forgetting a bunch that they taught me, and hopefully I come back and remember some more as I keep moving forward with this. Anyways, I thank you if you listened to the last podcast on my thoughts on becoming a 51st state. Thank you. It got a little bit of traction. I was happy to see that. I'll leave a link in the description below. Anyways, thanks for watching. See you next time.